The Great Pyramid of Giza is aligned to true north with an error of just 1/15 of a single degree, a precision achieved 4,500 years ago that rivals modern engineering. This fact alone challenges everything we think we know about ancient technology. How did a civilization with only copper tools accomplish this? For generations, we have been told a story of slow, steady progress, of humankind climbing from primitive beginnings through sheer grit and ingenuity. But what if our ancient ancestors had help? What if the evidence of that help is staring back at us from the very stones of our most iconic monuments, hidden within our oldest scriptures and encoded in myths whispered since the beginning of recorded time? This is not just a fringe idea from the shadows of the internet. It is a modern theory that has exploded into global consciousness, challenging the foundations of archaeology, history, and even religion. It asks a profound and unsettling question. Were we alone in our ancient past? Tonight, we embark on a journey not to blindly accept a sensational narrative, but to rigorously investigate it. We will travel to the most mysterious sites on Earth, decipher ancient texts, and consult with experts on both sides of a great divide. We will separate the compelling questions from the fabricated answers. This is the real history of the ancient astronaut theory, and by the end, you may never look at human history or our place in the cosmos the same way again. We begin with the very foundation of this idea, a hypothesis that seeks to rewrite our entire story from the ground up. Before we continue, make sure to smash both the like and hype buttons and subscribe to our channel for more ominous history videos. We greatly appreciate your support. What is the ancient astronaut theory? The idea that beings from another world visited Earth in the remote past is a concept that has captivated the human imagination for centuries, but it transformed from scattered speculation into a formalized hypothesis in the middle of the 20th century. This hypothesis has a specific name, paleocontact, meaning ancient contact. It provides a structured framework for re-examining every anomaly in the historical record. At its core, the ancient astronaut theory proposes that extraterrestrial intelligence interacted with ancient human civilizations. This interaction is presented as a primary catalyst for our sudden leaps in technology, agriculture, architecture, and cultural development. Proponents argue that many of humanity's oldest and most profound achievements were not born solely from human genius. They suggest these accomplishments were gifts, or perhaps instructions, from advanced visitors from the stars. This framework is used to reinterpret global mythology in a startlingly literal way. It suggests that gods who descended from the heavens in fiery chariots were not mythological constructs. Instead, they are presented as literal descriptions of astronauts and their spacecraft. The theory is also applied to archaeological enigmas across the planet. It proposes that structures of immense size and precision were built with tools or knowledge beyond the technological capability of the cultures that supposedly created them. The theory seeks to connect dots across vast spans of time and geography. It draws a line from the pyramids of Egypt to the lines of Peru, from the stories of Sumer to the temples of India. These wonders are presented not as isolated achievements but as pieces of a single interstellar puzzle. It directly challenges the conventional narrative of linear, independent human innovation. Instead, it paints a picture of cosmic intervention, where a helping hand from the stars gave humanity a push onto the fast track of civilization. This idea resonates deeply because it speaks to a very human sense of wonder and sometimes insecurity. When faced with the majestic Great Pyramid or the haunting Moai of Easter Island, we sometimes whisper, "How could they have done this?" The ancient astronaut theory provides a tantalizing answer. It asks, what if they didn't? What if someone else showed them how? But a compelling question is not the same as a proven answer. To evaluate this theory, we must first understand its claims clearly, and then subject each one to the harsh, clarifying light of evidence. The Anunnaki of Sumer, ancient alien gods. Our journey into the heart of this theory begins in the dusty plains of Mesopotamia, the land between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. This region is often called the cradle of civilization. Here, the ancient Sumerians flourished from around 4500 BC, gifting humanity with writing, the wheel, mathematics, and the first great cities like Uruk and Ur. They also left behind a rich and complex mythology, recorded on thousands of clay cuneiform tablets. Central to this cosmic drama were the Anunnaki, a group of powerful deities. Their name is often translated as those who from heaven to earth came. In Sumerian myths, the Anunnaki were intimately involved in human affairs from the very beginning. The most famous story involves the god Enki and the mother goddess Ninhursag. According to texts like the Atrahasis epic, they engineered the first humans. They did this not from love but out of a stark necessity. Their goal was to create a primitive worker species to take over the laborious task of mining gold for the gods. This narrative, of gods creating humans to serve them, is a cornerstone of the ancient astronaut reinterpretation. Proponents point to the very literal description of the Anunnaki descending from the heavens. They highlight the advanced knowledge of these beings, their need for earthly resources, and what sounds like direct genetic manipulation of hominids. The language used in these ancient texts is indeed startlingly technological to a modern ear. Descriptions of the gods include references to them wearing melem, a terrifying radiance or aura. This is often depicted as horned helmets that some argue resemble astronaut headgear. They wielded objects called ME, translated as divine powers or ordinances, which sound like physical devices containing advanced knowledge. Furthermore, the Sumerian king list details reigns of kings that lasted for tens of thousands of years before a great flood. Some interpret this as a record of direct Anunnaki rule. However, mainstream scholars of Assyriology and mythology provide a very different reading. They argue that interpreting these texts literally strips them of their profound cultural and religious context. The Anunnaki, to the Sumerians, were not aliens, but gods embodying natural forces and societal principles. The creation of humans from clay and the blood of a slain god is a powerful theological metaphor. It explores the human condition, part divine spark and part earthly matter, created to serve a divine order. Planet Nibiru, the truth about the 12th planet. The story of the Anunnaki is inextricably linked in modern theory to a specific and controversial celestial body. This is planet Nibiru, also called the 12th planet. According to the interpretation popularized in the late 20th century, the Anunnaki were not native to our solar system at all. They were instead astronauts from a rogue planet called Nibiru. This planet supposedly follows a vast elliptical orbit that brings it into the inner solar system only once every 3,600 years. This catastrophic periodic pass is claimed to be the source of numerous apocalyptic events in Earth's history. Theorists link it to geological upheavals and mythological disasters, including the Great Flood. It was during one such pass, proponents argue, that the Anunnaki first landed on Earth. Their mission was to seek vital resources, most notably gold. According to the narrative, they needed this gold to repair their own planet's damaged atmosphere. This story weaves together astronomy, ancient myth, and speculative catastrophe theory into a compelling science fiction saga. The evidence cited hinges on specific translations of Sumerian cuneiform. Theorists focus on references to a radiant or crossing planet associated with their chief god, Marduk. Furthermore, they point to what they claim is ancient knowledge of planets beyond Saturn. These planets were invisible to the naked eye, so their mention is taken as proof that the information was given by the advanced Anunnaki. The idea of a mysterious, unseen planet causing periodic havoc has seized the public imagination. It often links to doomsday prophecies and millennial anxiety, giving the theory a persistent cultural foothold. However, when we subject the Nibiru hypothesis to the scrutiny of modern astronomy, it collapses. Astronomers have conducted exhaustive surveys of our solar system, particularly in the search for a hypothesized Planet 9 in the far outer reaches. The proposed orbit of Nibiru would be incredibly unstable and would have been definitively detected by now due to its gravitational effects. No such perturbing body exists. Infrared sky surveys have ruled out anything of significant size within vast distances. How were the Egyptian pyramids really built? The Great Pyramid of Giza stands as the ultimate symbol of ancient mystery. For 45 centuries it has dominated the desert plateau, a mountain of stone so precisely engineered that it continues to baffle and inspire. The statistics are mind-numbing. Over 2 million blocks of limestone and granite were used, some weighing more than 70 tons. These blocks were assembled with joints so tight a credit card cannot be slid between them, and the structure is aligned to true north with minuscule error. It is this staggering scale and precision that fuels the ancient astronaut claim. The assertion is that 4th dynasty Egyptians, with only copper tools and rope, could not possibly have constructed such a monument. Theorists propose that the pyramid's design encodes advanced mathematical knowledge like pi and the golden ratio. They suggest its alignment to Orion's belt reveals star maps given by extraterrestrials. They claim the methods for moving the multi-ton granite beams in the king's chamber remain an unsolvable enigma. They also point to the absence of hieroglyphic blueprints or explicit engineering manuals. This absence is framed as a silent admission that the true architects were not of this world. This narrative asks a powerful and valid question: how did they do it? But in asking that question, it often dismisses the mountains of actual evidence left behind by the Egyptians themselves. It overlooks the fact that archaeology is a science of fragments, and those fragments tell a remarkable story. Modern archaeology and engineering have provided comprehensive, if not complete, answers. The pyramids were not built by slaves but by a rotating workforce of skilled Egyptian laborers. These workers were housed in a nearby village at Giza, where archaeologists have found bakeries, infirmaries, and records of beer and bread rations. The quarries are known, with stones still partially cut from the bedrock. They show the clear use of copper chisels, wooden wedges, and water to fracture the stone. Transport was achieved not by anti-gravity devices, but by sledges, waterways, and immense human power. A tomb from the Middle Kingdom vividly depicts a colossal statue being moved on a sledge, with workers pouring water in its path to reduce friction. The ramps used to raise the blocks are a subject of debate, but not a mystery. Several feasible designs have been proposed, including a spiraling internal ramp theory, supported by modern surveys. The alignment was achieved through simple, brilliant astronomy. Builders likely used a circumpolar star like Thuban to mark true north, a technique well within the capability of careful observers. The mathematical secrets of the pyramid are largely a product of choosing a specific slope angle. This angle naturally produces ratios that approximate pi and phi when measured in modern units, which the Egyptians did not use. Their system was based on the royal cubit. Easter Island mystery: who built the Moai statues? Isolated in the vast expanse of the South Pacific lies one of the most remote inhabited places on Earth. This is Rapa Nui, better known as Easter Island. Scattered across its windswept slopes are the silent, stoic sentinels of a lost age, the Moai. Nearly 900 of these colossal stone statues gaze inland from ceremonial platforms called ahu. Some stand over 30 feet tall and weigh over 80 tons. Their creation by a Polynesian society with no metal tools or wheels has become an archetype for an impossible ancient task. The puzzle is so profound, it has invited speculative solutions, including the help of visiting extraterrestrials. The questions are obvious and compelling. How could a people who Europeans first encountered in the 1700s with simple technology have possibly carved and moved these giants? Early European accounts described a barren, treeless landscape, making the use of wooden rollers seem impossible. This apparent disconnect between means and achievement is the fertile ground for ancient astronaut theories. However, the real story of the Moai, uncovered by decades of modern research, is far more fascinating and human. The Polynesian settlers who reached Rapa Nui around 1200 AD did not find a barren rock. They found a subtropical paradise lush with palm forests, which provided the resources for their incredible project. The Moai were carved directly from the volcanic tuff of the quarry at Rano Raraku. They used stone handpicks called toki, made from a harder basaltic rock. Thousands of these picks have been found at the site. The process was a sacred act of communion with the ancestors, not a slave-driven engineering task. But the central question remains. How did they move the statues across the island to their final platforms? The oral traditions of the Rapa Nui people themselves held the answer. They said the statues walked. For years this was considered mere myth. Then archaeological experiments led by researchers demonstrated a remarkably simple and effective method. By using 3 ropes teams to rock a Moai carefully from side to side, a small group could indeed walk a multi-ton statue upright across the landscape. This method aligns with the legend of the statues walking with mana, or spiritual power. Puma Punku stones advanced ancient technology. High on the Bolivian Altiplano near the shores of Lake Titicaca lies one of the most architecturally perplexing sites in the world. This is Puma Punku. Part of the larger Tiwanaku culture complex, it thrived from around 500 AD to 1000 AD. Today, Puma Punku is a field of shattered and scattered stone megaliths. What makes these stones the subject of intense speculation is their mind-bending precision. We see massive blocks of red sandstone and even harder andesite. These stones are cut with flawlessly straight edges, perfect right angles, and intricate geometric channels and notches that look machined. Some stones feature H-shaped blocks with interlocking grooves of incredible consistency. Others have drill holes that appear perfectly cylindrical. To the untrained eye, it looks impossible for a pre-Columbian culture to have achieved such work without iron or the wheel. This apparent impossibility is the cornerstone of the ancient astronaut claim for Puma Punku. Theorists argue the precision is beyond the capability of stone and copper tools. They suggest the use of advanced power tools, diamond-tipped saws, or even sonic cutting devices from alien visitors. They point to the sheer hardness of andesite and the uniformity of the cuts as smoking gun evidence of a technology out of place in time. However, a closer examination of the site and the Tiwanaku culture reveals a different, though no less impressive, reality. First, the context. Puma Punku was not built by an unknown civilization. It was a major ceremonial center of the Tiwanaku state, a powerful and sophisticated empire. The Tiwanaku were master engineers, as evidenced by nearby structures like the Akapana Pyramid with its beautifully fitted stone walls. The tools for this work were not alien, but remarkably effective. Archaeologists have demonstrated that hard andesite could be worked through a combination of techniques. Workers used hammerstones of even harder rock to pound and shape surfaces. They used simple stone abrasives like sand and water for grinding, employing patient, repetitive labor. The precise grooves and notches could be achieved with stone chisels and wooden wedges, likely aided by templates. The famous drill holes are likely the result of a tubular drill. This simple technology, known worldwide, uses a hollow reed or copper tube with sand as an abrasive, rotated by a bow drill. This method can produce clean, cylindrical cores. Furthermore, the most perfectly cut stones at Puma Punku are the decorative facing slabs. The rubble core behind them is made of rougher, less carefully shaped material. Nasca lines purpose alien runways or sacred paths. Etched into the arid, stony plains of southern Peru are the Nasca lines. This is one of archaeology's most visually arresting mysteries. Hundreds of geometric lines, trapezoids and triangles stretch for miles across the desert. Alongside them are colossal depictions of animals and plants, including a hummingbird, a spider, and a monkey. These geoglyphs were created by the Nasca culture between 200 BC and 600 AD. These formations are so vast that their complete forms can only be fully appreciated from the air. This simple fact has been the launchpad for the most famous ancient astronaut interpretation. The theory proposes that the Nasca lines were landing strips or navigation markers for alien spacecraft. Proponents argue that ancient humans, with no ability to fly, would have had no reason to create images only visible from high above. Therefore, they conclude, The lines must have been created for the benefit of flyers. Specifically, they were meant for extraterrestrial visitors who needed guidance for their vessels. The straight, long lines are likened to runways. The complex animal figures are seen as signals or messages for the gods in the sky. It is a theory built on a seemingly logical premise. If you can't see it, why make it? But this premise fundamentally misunderstands the Nasca people and the purpose of ritual in the ancient world. The Nasca were not a mysterious lost civilization. They were a sophisticated culture known for their intricate textiles and ceramics. The lines were made by a remarkably simple process. They removed the dark sun-baked surface stones to reveal the lighter-colored soil underneath. This design would last for centuries in the rainless climate. The key to understanding their purpose lies not in alien logistics, but in Nasca religion and hydrology. The Nasca Desert is one of the driest places on Earth. Water was the paramount concern of life. Archaeological research strongly indicates the lines were part of a vast sacred landscape related to water and fertility rituals. Many lines lead to or from sources of water. The animal figures are associated with water in Andean cosmology. Vimana flying machines in the Mahabharata. The ancient Sanskrit epics of India are not just stories. The Mahabharata and the Ramayana are cosmic dramas on an unimaginable scale. Composed over centuries beginning around 400 BC, they describe heroes and gods wielding weapons of cataclysmic power. They engage in aerial battles and travel the heavens in vehicles called vimanas. The descriptions in these texts are startlingly vivid to a modern reader. The Mahabharata speaks of a vimana as an aerial chariot with the sides of iron and clad with wings. It details dramatic flight maneuvers, noting the chariot rose up with a monstrous din. It also describes weapons that sound eerily familiar. One passage mentions a single projectile charged with all the power of the universe. It describes an incandescent column of smoke and flame, as bright as 10,000 suns, calling it an unknown weapon, an iron thunderbolt. To proponents of the ancient astronaut theory, these are not poetic metaphors. They are literal records of advanced technology. They are seen as accounts of aircraft and perhaps even nuclear weapons, possessed by ancient civilizations or given by extraterrestrial visitors. They argue that detailed mechanical descriptions of vimanas in later medieval texts are evidence of lost scientific knowledge. This interpretation asks a bold question. Could these epics be preserving a memory of a technologically advanced age, or could they be recording contact with a more advanced species? The answer from mainstream scholars of Indian literature and history is nuanced but clear. These are mythological accounts, not technical manuals. The Sanskrit epics are foundational religious and poetic works. They belong to a genre that blends history, myth, and theology within a specific cosmological framework. The vimanas are the chariots of the gods. They are primarily symbolic vehicles representing divine power, sovereignty, and the ability to traverse different realms of existence. Comparing them directly to modern aircraft is an exercise in selective interpretation. It ignores their core purpose as profound mythological motifs. The frightening weapons described are always presented as supernatural armaments, unleashed through meditation and mantra. The Baghdad Battery. Did ancient people have electricity? In the National Museum of Iraq, there once sat a small, unassuming artifact that has sparked enduring debate. Known as the Baghdad Battery, it consists of a 13-centimeter tall clay jar from the Parthian period around 200 BC to 200 AD. Inside the jar was a copper cylinder, sealed at the bottom with asphalt. Within that cylinder was an iron rod. If the jar was filled with an acidic liquid like vinegar or wine, it becomes a basic electrochemical cell. It becomes capable of producing a low-voltage electric current, roughly 1 volt. Discovered in 1936, this object immediately suggested a shocking possibility. Did ancient peoples know about and use electricity over a millennium before its modern discovery? This question electrified the imaginations of historians and theorists alike. Ancient astronaut theorists embraced the battery as potential proof of advanced anomalous knowledge. They suggested it could have been used for electroplating gold onto silver. Others proposed uses in medical therapy or for creating religious experiences in temples. The idea of electric light in ancient Egyptian tombs, though never evidenced, is often linked to this find. It presents a tantalizing what-if scenario of a forgotten scientific tradition. However, the consensus among archaeologists and historians of technology is far more cautious. It leans toward a less sensational explanation. The primary issue is one of context. No wires, no connections, and no electroplated objects have ever been found in association with any of the several similar jars discovered. If these were batteries, where is the rest of the circuit? Where is the evidence of their application? Furthermore, the technology for creating such a weak current would have had no obvious, practical application. Any supposed use could be achieved by simpler, known methods of the time. The electroplating theory is particularly problematic. Ancient Mesopotamian gilding was expertly done using mercury amalgam, a proven and effective technique that required no electricity. So, what was the Baghdad battery? The most plausible explanation is that it was a storage vessel for sacred scrolls. The iron rod and copper cylinder would have been the core of a scroll made of precious materials. The asphalt seal would keep the contents dry and intact. This was a common practice for storing important texts. Another possibility is its use in ritual magic or medicine, where a mild tingle could be interpreted as a magical property. The Antikythera mechanism, an ancient Greek computer. In the silent depths of the Aegean Sea, a shipwreck from the 1st century BC held a secret. Off the coast of the Greek island of Antikythera, divers recovered a corroded lump of bronze and wood in 1901. It was initially overlooked amidst more glamorous statues and pottery. For decades, its true nature remained hidden inside that calcified shell. No one could have guessed what this unassuming object truly was. Decades later, painstaking cleaning and advanced imaging techniques revealed the astonishing truth. X-ray tomography showed a complex clockwork of at least 30 interlocking bronze gears. This was the Antikythera mechanism, a hand-powered astronomical calculator of staggering sophistication. Its dials and inscriptions tracked the cycles of the sun, the moon, and the known planets. It could predict solar and lunar eclipses and even time the ancient Olympic Games. Its complexity is unmatched for over a millennium afterwards. This sudden appearance of such advanced engineering has led some to propose extraordinary origins. Could this knowledge have been given by a higher source, perhaps even extraterrestrial inspiration? The argument suggests such a leap in precision engineering seems to appear from nowhere. It is presented as a ghost in the archaeological record, hinting at lost sciences or outside help. However, the true story of the Antikythera mechanism is one of brilliant human culmination. It did not appear in a vacuum. It was created during the Hellenistic period, an era of extraordinary scientific flourishing. Figures like Archimedes, who designed complex mechanical devices, and Hipparchus, who modeled lunar motion, provided the intellectual foundation. Their theoretical work is literally embodied in the mechanism's gearing. The inscriptions on the device are in Koine Greek. Its calendar references are specifically Greek. Research has shown it fits within a known tradition of ancient geared devices referenced in texts. The gears show file marks and asymmetries indicative of masterful hand craftsmanship, not micro-machining. This device is not proof of alien contact. It is our best evidence for the staggering heights of ancient Greek science and engineering when fully applied. The Dogon tribe and the star Sirius B deep in the Bandiagara escarpment of Mali, the Dogon people preserve a unique cosmology. When revealed to the Western world in the 20th century, it sent shockwaves through anthropology. French anthropologists Marcel Griol and Germain Dieterlen reported the Dogon possess startlingly accurate knowledge about the star system Sirius. This is the brightest star in our night sky. According to their work, Dogon priests described Sirius as having a tiny, incredibly dense and invisible companion star. They said this companion orbited Sirius every 50 years. This is a precise description of Sirius B, a white dwarf star, invisible to the naked eye. Western astronomers only confirmed its existence with telescopes in the 1860s. Its 50.1-year orbit was calculated in the 1920s. To proponents, this is seemingly irrefutable evidence. How could an isolated tribe with no telescopes know such precise astronomical data? The conclusion drawn is that this knowledge was imparted by extraterrestrial visitors. Specifically, they suggest beings from the Sirius system visited the Dogon in the distant past. This narrative fits the pattern of star maps given by alien teachers perfectly. It is a compelling and elegant solution. However, a rigorous examination reveals a more complex and terrestrial explanation. The first critical issue is potential contamination. The Dogon had contact with European missionaries, explorers, and officials for decades before the anthropologists' work. Sirius B was major astronomical news in the early 20th century, featured in popular magazines. It is very likely this information was transmitted and then incorporated into existing Dogon mythology, which already venerated Sirius. Furthermore, the Dogon cosmological system is deeply symbolic, not a scientific star chart. Anthropologists who later revisited the Dogon found little evidence of this detailed knowledge among most people. The 50-year cycle also matches important Dogon renewal rituals. The simplest explanation is cultural diffusion, not visitation from star beings. This case is a profound lesson in the dangers of projecting our fascinations onto another culture. Ancient astronauts in the Bible, Ezekiel's wheel. For those seeking evidence within established religion, few passages are cited as often as Ezekiel chapter 1. Writing in the 6th century BC during the Babylonian exile, the prophet describes a terrifying vision marking his call. He sees a great storm cloud from the north with flashing fire and brilliant light. From within this maelstrom emerge 4 living creatures, each with 4 faces and 4 wings. Moving beside these creatures is something he calls wheels within wheels. These wheels are covered in eyes, and they move in unison with the living beings. Ezekiel writes that the spirit of the living creature was in the wheels. Above this assembly is a throne of lapis lazuli, and upon it a figure with the appearance of a man, glowing like molten metal. The description is vivid, mechanical, and awe-inspiring. To the ancient astronaut theorist, this is not a mystical vision. It is a straightforward report of a technological encounter. The storm cloud is interpreted as a descending spacecraft. The 4 creatures are seen as landing struts or drones. The wheels within wheels are described as rotating gears or gyroscopic landing gear. The glowing figure becomes the pilot or commander in a metallic suit. The text is reframed as a historical record of physical events. Yet, to scholars of religion, this literal reading misses the profound theological context. Ezekiel was a priest, and his vision is built from established biblical and Mesopotamian symbolic imagery. The 4 living creatures draw from Assyrian guardian figures. The wheels covered in eyes symbolize God's omniscience. The brilliant metals and storm are classic ways to describe the unbearable presence of the divine in prophetic literature. Ezekiel uses powerful imagery to convey his encounter with the God of Israel. To reduce this crafted theological masterpiece to a UFO report ignores its purpose and symbolism. If this was a physical craft, why did no one else in Babylon see it? The vision is sublime religious poetry about God's sovereignty. Seeking spaceships in these verses blinds us to the deeper spiritual meaning that has sustained believers for millennia. Carbon dating debunked what ancient alien shows get wrong. A common claim in popular ancient astronaut media involves radical dating of artifacts. The narrative often follows a familiar pattern. Mainstream archaeologists use carbon dating at an ancient site and get dates of a few thousand years. Then, the show claims, independent researchers use other techniques and get much older dates. These dates can be tens of thousands or even millions of years old. This argument is deployed to suggest a cover-up or a profound scientific error. It implies these structures were built by an ancient advanced civilization long before recorded history. This claim relies heavily on the audience's limited understanding of how archaeological dating truly works. It creates an illusion of controversy where a strong scientific consensus actually exists. To set the record straight, we must understand what radiocarbon dating can and cannot do. Developed in the late 1940s, it measures the decay of carbon-14 in once living organic material. When an organism dies, it stops absorbing this isotope. Scientists measure how much is left to estimate the time since death. It is an invaluable tool, but with strict and important limitations. The first critical limit is its range. Carbon-14 decays relatively quickly. After about 50,000 years, there is too little left to measure accurately. This means it is useless for dating anything from the age of the dinosaurs. Any claim that carbon dating was used on a dinosaur bone is a fabrication. No credible scientist would attempt to carbon date a fossil 66 million years old. Second, carbon dating dates organic material found at a site, not the stone itself. Charcoal in a construction layer dates when that wood was burned, providing a proxy for building activity. It does not date the cutting of the stone blocks. Third, contamination from groundwater or modern handling can skew results. This is why rigorous lab pre-treatment is essential. The methods presented as alternatives often measure different, less precise things. The racist side of ancient alien theories. On the surface, the ancient astronaut theory seems to celebrate human achievement, but when we examine which achievements it questions, a disturbing pattern emerges. The theory is overwhelmingly applied to the monuments of non-white, non-European civilizations. It targets the pyramids of Egypt, the Moai of Polynesia, the lines of Peru, and the stonework of pre-Columbian Bolivia. It is rarely invoked to explain the Roman Colosseum or the Gothic cathedrals of Europe. Why is that? This selective application reveals an uncomfortable, often unconscious bias. At its core, the argument that aliens must have built this implies that the associated people could not have. It is a denial of their intellectual capacity, ingenuity, and cultural sophistication. This thinking has deep roots in colonialist ideologies. Early European explorers often attributed ruins they found to lost white races or biblical figures. They could not conceive that indigenous peoples built such wonders. The ancient astronaut theory is a modern sci-fi reboot of this old, damaging trope. It strips agency from magnificent cultures. It turns their priests, engineers, and artists into mere laborers following alien blueprints. It robs them of their history and their genius. Consider the implicit logic. When we see the Great Pyramid, the theory asks, how could Africans have built this? But it never looks at the Roman Pont du Gard aqueduct and asks, how could Europeans have built this? The unspoken assumption is that one group is naturally capable, while the other is not. This is not just an academic concern. It has real-world impacts on how we engage with these cultures and their descendant communities. Furthermore, the theory often appropriates and distorts sacred cultural heritage. The Dogon and Sirius law is a spiritual cosmology, not a star map. The Vimanas are divine vehicles in a religious epic. To take these elements out of context for a Western sci-fi narrative is a form of cultural imperialism. The ancient astronaut theory can be a deeply disrespectful framework. It fails to see the true wonder of human diversity and creativity. The psychology of ancient alien beliefs. If the evidence is so scientifically thin, why does this theory remain powerfully attractive? The answer lies not in archaeology, but in the fascinating workings of the human mind. Our psychology is wired with cognitive biases that this narrative fulfills perfectly. The first is our innate tendency toward pattern recognition, called apophenia. We are meaning-making machines, seeking connections everywhere. We see faces in clouds and animals in stars. When we see the straight lines at Nasca, our modern brains, steeped in the concept of runways, make that connection. This overrides more complex, ritual explanations. This is coupled with the argument from ignorance fallacy. A lack of a complete explanation is taken as proof for a specific, extraordinary one. We don't know exactly how they moved the Moai, therefore aliens must have helped. The narrative also provides a deep sense of wonder and meaning. It replaces a slow, random process of human development with a thrilling, purposeful story. It makes the universe feel connected and dramatic. There is also a strong anti-establishment appeal. Positioning mainstream experts as close-minded guardians casts the believer as a brave truth-seeker. This is emotionally empowering and creates a sense of belonging to an enlightened in-group. Furthermore, the theory simplifies overwhelming complexity. Human history is messy, filled with trial and error and lost details. The ancient astronaut theory offers a clean, single cause for disparate phenomena. It is a universal key that seems to unlock pyramids, myths, and maps alike. This simplicity is cognitively comforting. The role of media cannot be overstated. Television shows use dramatic storytelling techniques to give equal weight to fringe ideas and established science. This creates a false balance that legitimizes extraordinary claims. The visual spectacle of ancient sites paired with CGI spacecraft creates a memorable experience. This often outweighs dry textual rebuttals. Ultimately, the theory thrives because it tells a good story. It caters to our desire for mystery, meaning, and cosmic significance. Understanding this psychological appeal is key to separating its emotional power from its factual poverty. Human ingenuity solving ancient engineering mysteries. When we remove the speculative lens, a far more impressive story emerges. It is a global tapestry of human ingenuity. Across continents and millennia, people developed astonishing solutions using observation, experimentation, and local materials. In Egypt, pyramid builders evolved systems of ramps lubricated with water over decades of trial and error. This was not a sudden gift, but a cumulative engineering project. The Romans, masters of pragmatic engineering, invented concrete that could cure underwater. This allowed them to build enduring harbors and iconic structures. Their aqueducts maintained a gentle slope over miles through precise surveying. In South America, the Inca constructed Machu Picchu with seismic-resistant mortarless masonry. Their stones were shaped to fit like a puzzle, allowing walls to settle back after earthquakes. In the vast Pacific, Polynesian voyagers achieved a feat of cognitive engineering. Using knowledge of stars, wave patterns, and bird flight, they navigated canoes across thousands of open ocean miles. They discovered and settled islands from Hawaii to New Zealand without any instruments. In medieval Europe, Gothic architects developed the flying buttress. This allowed cathedrals with walls of stained glass that seemed to defy the heaviness of stone. These are not the works of passive recipients. They are signatures of active, brilliant, and culturally specific problem-solving. The Moai were walked because it was efficient on that terrain. The Nasca lines were made by moving stones because that was the material at hand. The precision of Puma Punku came from generations of stonemasons honing their craft. This human-centric view does not make the past less mysterious. It makes it more profound. It forces us to ask better questions. Not who gave them this knowledge, but how did they figure this out? It reveals a history of collaboration, past knowledge, and learned failures. When we credit our ancestors with their own intelligence, we see a lineage of innovation we are part of. Their mysteries are invitations to understand the incredible adaptability of the human mind. This legacy gives us the tools to ask the next great question. Will we ever find proof of ancient aliens? Having scrutinized the claims of the past, we turn to the future. Is the idea of ancient astronauts forever myth? Or could science one day provide proof? The answer is nuanced. Yes, the possibility for proof exists, but it must meet an exceptionally high standard. None of the current evidence comes close to meeting that bar. The scientific search for extraterrestrial intelligence is based on a reasonable premise. The universe is vast, and the ingredients for life are common. Therefore, life, even intelligent life, could exist elsewhere. This makes the concept of past visitation possible, but possibility is a far cry from probability or proof. The gap between could and did is enormous. It is a gap that must be filled with extraordinary evidence, not just extraordinary stories. We must define what that evidence would actually look like. Verifiable evidence would need to be unambiguous and independently testable. Imagine the discovery of a material with an isotopic ratio not found in our solar system. This material would need to be embedded in a secure, well-dated archaeological layer, or perhaps a genetic marker in ancient human remains with no biological origin on Earth. Another signal could be a layer of plutonium-244, an isotope not natural to Earth, dating from antiquity. Critically, this evidence must survive the rigorous scrutiny of peer review. Other scientists must be able to examine it, test it, and attempt to disprove it. The current evidence of interpreted myths and monuments fails this test utterly. It is based on subjective interpretation, not objective, physical data. It cannot be replicated or falsified in a laboratory. As our tools improve, our search becomes more sophisticated. We are now mapping thousands of exoplanets, some in habitable zones. We are developing protocols to detect technosignatures on other worlds. If we discovered a civilization on a nearby star, we could then re-examine human history with a new, legitimate question. Is there any material evidence of their presence? Until that discovery, the burden of proof remains squarely on those making the extraordinary claim. The future of this question lies in exploring the cosmos with science, not reinterpreting the past with imagination, separating facts from myth. Our journey has taken us from the cradle of civilization to the depths of the sea. We have encountered staggering human achievements and the equally human desire to explain them. The conclusion we must draw is clear. The ancient astronaut theory as a historical narrative is a modern myth. It is a compelling and emotionally resonant myth, but a myth nonetheless. It is built on a foundation of logical fallacies and selective reasoning. It employs the argument from ignorance where a gap in knowledge is filled with a predetermined answer. It misinterprets sacred texts as technical manuals, stripping them of their cultural and spiritual meaning. It persistently applies a bias that diminishes the capabilities of non-Western cultures. It takes genuine archaeological questions and offers fantastical answers that stop further inquiry. This does not mean the universe is not wondrous, or that the search for extraterrestrial life is folly. On the contrary, the cosmos is more wondrous because the pyramids, the Moai, and the mechanism were created by us. That is the true miracle. To attribute these works to aliens is an act of historical ingratitude. It disowns our own inheritance of genius, resilience, and breathtaking creativity. The real story is one of diversity and innovation. It is the story of Sumerian priests observing the heavens to create calendars. It is the story of Egyptian architects learning from collapse to achieve perfection. It is the story of Polynesian navigators reading star paths on open water. It is the story of Greek philosophers modeling the cosmos in bronze. This story connects us to our ancestors as active participants in a grand human project. So let us keep looking up at the stars with curiosity and ambition. Let that drive be the same spirit that built the great monuments of old. Let us pursue real evidence of cosmic neighbors with telescopes and spacecraft. Let us not seek it in forced readings of ancient poetry, and let us look upon the works of our ancestors with clear eyes. Let us give them the credit they earned through millennia of perseverance. The truth is not out there. It is right here, in the stones they left behind, and it is far more impressive than any fiction. If you made it this far, thanks for watching, and make sure to smash both the like and hype buttons and subscribe to our channel for more ominous history videos. We greatly appreciate your support. See you in the next video.